Hello, thanks for choosing to watch this video on fantasy model kits or wishful thinking model kits that I wish had been available when I was growing up in the 1970s. There are mild spoilers ahead. There's a list of the films and TV shows included in the description. If you want to avoid any spoilers, watch those films or TV shows first. Jumping in with the Jupiter 2 from TV's Lost in Space. Big hit show from the 1960s. Where was this kit? If you'd asked me, did Aurora do a kit of the Jupiter 2 from Lost in Space? I would have said absolutely they did. In the instructions of kits like the Flying Sub and the Invaders UFO and the Seaview, they had other kits available in this line, or similar kits available, and I would swear the Jupiter 2 was listed there. But no, the first commercially available was by Polar Lights. They did a 72nd or 48th scale, and they now do a 35th. Polar Lights did a great job with their, I'll call it the 72nd scale kit, because I actually think it's somewhere between 72nd and 48th. They did a great job of it, making it basically an Aurora kit. You can lift the top off and it has a whole interior top deck. I don't think it has anything for the somewhat controversial lower deck that there arguably isn't really room for in the ship. But anyway, yeah, you can lift off the top, but it's got all the detail inside there. So that's what this Aurora kit would be, should have been, actually was. I don't know if the Polar Lights kit was made from maybe patterns that Aurora did. Anyway, wouldn't this have been great to have a kit of the Jupiter 2 you could have put on your shelf next to the Seaview and the Flying Sub and the Invaders and the 2001 Moon Bus? It would have been totally in that vein and would have been a lot of fun. We're going to stick with science fiction and flying saucers. It's from the day the Earth stood still, klatoons spaceship. Although in those days when they're making these kits, they didn't get super specific because people had probably only seen the things once or twice. And also with this box, because it is such a kind of classic silver shiny flying saucer, I thought that was a good name to put on the box. This is a terrific film, one of the best science fiction films ever made, one of the best films ever made, and it resonates more and more every time you see it. So this would be an interesting challenge as a kit because it's completely smooth. The way it's depicted in the film, there's no surface detail. There's a portal when Klaatu exits the ship that just sort of appears. There's no hatch there's no panel lines, there's nothing. There may be some detail underneath, you never really see underneath it, so there may be a little bit of something there, but there's not going to be a whole lot. So I would think if they were to make a kit, certainly back then, and Aurora were going to do it because they did the kind of the American sci-fi, if you like, it would have probably the central dome. I would say you would lift that off and you'd have an interior in there. You do see a sort of control room in the film. And I'd probably have it as two optional parts, one a full dome and then one the dome with that entranceway sort of already removed. So that would make it a little more interesting as a kit. But I think it would maybe be fun if they did it in that chrome plastic. You could kind of imagine it's silver in the movie. It's not super shiny, but it is silver. If there was a kit of this and it'd be maybe 10 inches 11 inches round, that sort of the top and the bottom pieces, the exterior pieces, would be chrome, and then whatever was inside would be regular plastic. There's no engines visible, and in fact in the film when it's in motion, when it's flying along, it glows. So I thought another thing that could be really fun is if there was a glow in the dark version of this where the hull, the top and bottom pieces, would be done in the Aurora glow-in-the-dark plastic, again just to give it a little bit of unique interest. Otherwise it's a neat kit of a great subject, but there's not a lot actually to it. So it's a slight variation in the box art for the glow-in-the-dark version. Another intelligent, very well made science fiction film from the 1950s is This Island Earth, and there's a spaceship in that from the planet Metaluna. It's a cool design because if you were to describe it, it would be a flying saucer and would fit in with the 50s. It's a flying saucer, but it is teardrop shaped rather than being a circle, and it has this tractor beam that you see is used to lift up the biplane that Dr. Meacham and Dr. Adams are sort of trying to make their getaway in, and you see that inside a sort of hangar bay, and you see a control room inside, but you don't see too much else. And I think given the size of this thing, it's pretty huge, so I don't think it would really be the right size or scale if you had a kit of it, let's say, 10 inches, 12 inches long. There probably wouldn't be the right scale to get any sort of interior in there. So it would just be a nice ship. You probably get a nice stand for it with a bit of the metaluna surface underneath, maybe. It'd be a very quick build, I think. Maybe you'd have transparencies for the windows. It does shoot a laser out of it, although you don't really see where that comes from. It's got this kind of neat sort of checkerboard surface paneling on it. It would probably be a paint job rather than something you'd make. Another great film is from the king of sci-fi, certainly in the 1950s, George Pal, a movie called When Worlds Collide. It's actually a very credible film given the sort of preposterous premise, which is a planet is discovered and its orbit is going to make it pass through the Earth, hence the collision. So there's this plan to build a spaceship and get as many humans on it as they can, maybe 25, 30 people, and use that to escape the Earth before the planet Zyra hits them. And in the film, Zyra sort of comes close and the gravitational pull wreaks havoc on tidal waves and stuff. And then Belus, which is the star that it orbits, is what actually hits the Earth. And that's what's seen in the picture here. And in the film, the idea is to get in the Ark, launch that, and then land that on Zyra, and maybe the human race can live on. But it's, as I said, it's for all that kind of outlandish idea, and the science probably doesn't hold up terribly well, but it's all played very straight, and it's a George Pal production, so it looks great, and the money's sort of all up there on the screen. There is a kit of this, actually. There's a kit that Pegasus Models did maybe 10 years or so ago, and there's a lot of these sort of things from this sort of era are now being made, probably because there's people who grew up with watching them either at the cinema or on TV, and I think maybe are now old enough to actually be in business making these models. I saw a lot of these 50s sci-fi movies in seasons of classic sci-fi, on the BBC or whenever on TV in the 70s growing up. And these things individually were a pretty big part of sci-fi hardware. You had the Gerry Anderson TV shows, which were packed with stuff. And you had Star Trek and the Owen Allen TV shows and some old 50s movies. And that was kind of it, So having a kit of any of those things at that time would have been amazing. Speaking of some subjects that have already had a kit made of them, The Black Hole was a movie that Disney made in the wake of Star Wars, and a couple of kits were made by MPC. They did the two main robots, Vincent and Maximilian, pretty decent kits, and they also did the Cygnus, which was about 2 feet long and was a horrendous kit. It was second only to MPC's Eagle Transporter, maybe, and for similar reasons. I mean, you look at the movie and the Cygnus is just, it's incredibly intricate, it's just girder work, it's just very complex, lit up a lot of the time. It's a very challenging thing to do in any scale. I think the model they built for the movie was like 10 feet long or so. But this is something that even as a kid, when I got this, it was kind of like, this is kind of bit disappointing. They molded the whole thing, and all the girder work, all that structure was just done as sort of raised detail on it. So it was solid grey plastic with the stuff just as relief on top of it. So you could kind of paint it, black, and then, highlight the raised areas, or kind of paint it yellow for if it was lit up and highlight it. It was pretty terrible. And if you look at the ship in the movie, it's kind of got 5 sections that make up the main fuselage. And this kit only has 4. I guess somebody decided they could probably save a bit of money and fit it in the boxes they had if they made it just a bit shorter. So pretty disappointing. It was a nice size kit, I will say, though. I think a couple of feet was a pretty good size for it. You can get battleship kits that had a reasonable amount of detail. I wonder if they could have molded it, instead of in grey plastic, molded it in clear plastic. So it'd be the same kit parts with some things added just for the interior of it, where people sort of live and stuff. But then have it be in clear plastic. You still have to paint all the girder work, but at least it would have some hope of sort of resembling that kind of Eiffel Tower look, rather than this sort of solid block that the MPC kit had, which was really disappointing. So this was in here just because, don't believe everything you read on the internet. FX kits in the 70s were pretty good. They certainly weren't they weren't like this. And it was like, oh, if FX had done it, it would have been really good, or certainly a lot better. The companion piece, which MPC didn't do, is the Palomino, which is the other main ship in the film. You did get a little Palomino with the MPC Cygnus. It was maybe like an inch inch tall or something. But actually having a kit of that, I put 144 scale here because that's the Airfix space rocket scale, 144. And I think dimensions of both the Cygnus and the Palomino are a little hard to come by, but I think it would be about a foot tall in 144. Good sort of size. Again, it has a lot of girder work, but maybe that could be molded in some way. Anyway, it would have been a fun kit. So The Black Hole was a big movie, one of many in the wake of Star Wars, and in fact it came out in 1979, and also in 1979 was Moonraker, which was the James Bond film where famously James Bond goes into space. So if you had a space shuttle kit in your line, you're just talking about a new paint guide and some new decals, and then you've got a James Bond kit you can sell as well as your regular space shuttles. But there hadn't been that many kits of James Bond related stuff. And the film right before Moonraker was The Spy Who Loved Me, which is Roger Moore's best Bond movie. I think everyone agrees. You buy the ticket and you want to see a Bond movie, it gives you everything you'd possibly want. And one of the things in the film is the villain of the film, Carl Stromberg, has this great sort of ocean base called Atlantis, which is this big spider-looking thing that can descend under the water, and helicopters on there, which are kind of encased in these watertight domes when it goes underwater. So this would just be a fun kit in 600 scale. I mean, it's huge in the film. I think it'd be about a foot tall, and the little Bell Jet Ranger helicopters would be maybe an inch, maybe half an inch long, maybe. But yeah, just be a cool thing to sort of sit on the shelf. Another very lavish Bond film is You Only Live Twice. And in that film, there is a space rocket that the bad guys have, which they use to capture American and Russian space capsules. And the ship takes off from this secret base in a volcano. I mean, this is it. This is the classic Bond stuff, right? It's the volcano base, and the lake of the volcano slides open and the ship blasts off. So it's neat. It's a two-stage rocket, and the front of it kind of opens up and sort of swallows up these space capsules, which is a really, very creepy scene, especially the first time you see it. Put it at 144 scale, because that's Airfix scale of choice for all their other rockets. It wouldn't be very big. It'd be maybe 10 inches tall, both stages. So the main part of it you see would probably be about 6 inches long. And then the little Gemini capsules, maybe 2 inches in that scale. And I think if you imagine this was made, the film was 1967. If a kit came out at that time, at the height of Airfix's rivets period, this ship in the movie has lots of rivets that have great rivet detail. They'd probably actually have a do not cement for the nose cone, so you could actually open it up and close it rather than have it posed open or closed. Actually have it as something that you could move, like retractable undercarriage and movable flap, like on their aircraft kits. Also from a Bond film, from Thunderball, the villain of the movie, Emilio Largo, has this boat that he uses to sort of cruise around the Bahamas. And at the climax of the film, he makes his escape by jettisoning the front of his boat, which is revealed to be a hydrofoil, and he speeds away, leaving the back half of the boat, and they sort of start shooting back at the goodies, and Bond has to chase Largo and all the rest of it. And I remember when I saw this on TV for the first time, and there was that moment when you actually see the ship, and it separates and launches a hydrofoil. I was like, whoa, how cool is that? It's pretty cool. It's all done full size too, which is all the better. But yeah, this, I think, I don't know why they didn't do it, because it would have been a really neat kit. I think in 72nd scale, which was a scale Airfix used for the MTB, and the E-boat, which was about 20 inches, and this would be about the same size, the hydrofoil itself would be about a foot long, and the cocoon section would be about another 8 inches or so. And obviously the kit, you would have to have it so you could detach the two pieces. You'd probably have some optional parts if you wanted to have the sort of the gun turrets that come into play when the cocoon is separated. You could have some little figures on there. I mean, it would just be a really cool model, regardless of the origin of it being in a Bond movie. It would just be a really cool model with lots of sort of modeling opportunities, and it just would have been a really cool kit, and it would have looked nice on the shelf, and it's a decent enough size, and with the hydrofoil and all the rest of it, it would display really, really, really well. So again, what if? Wouldn't it have been great if? So that's about it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below. I have lots more artwork like this. There is another video of fantasy what if box art if you want to check that out too. Thanks again for watching, and see you soon. Bye bye.